You got him, you took him to the bath, you drew a warm bath for him, and you put him in the bathtub, right?
Yes, sir.
This is hours before he dies, right?
Yes, sir.
You look like that when you put him in the bathtub?
This is 44-year-old Shanda Vander Ark. She appears in court distressed, clutching her stomach, her face contorted as she doubles over in what seems like sickness as crime scene photos are flashed before her. But don't let appearances deceive you. This isn't a display of remorse or horror at the brutality shown in the photographs. Instead, it's a chilling performance by a woman who is not a spectator of the crime, but the orchestrator of her own son's torture and subsequent murder. On the night of July 6, 2022, the quiet community of Norton Shores was rocked to its core. Responding to a distressing 911 call, local police arrived at the Vander Ark residence, stepping into a scene that would haunt even the most seasoned officers. There, they discovered 15-year-old Timothy Ferguson, emaciated, his lifeless body bearing the cruel marks of prolonged torture. In the upcoming days and weeks, the investigation would reveal a chilling story of abuse. Timothy, a child with autism, known for his gentle nature despite his speech and motor impairments, had been subjected to unspeakable cruelty by the very hands that were supposed to protect him. Timothy was subjected to regular mistreatment that included being force-fed hot sauce, restrained with shackles and zip ties, deprived of sleep, and given ice baths as a form of punishment. At the time of his death, he weighed just 69 pounds, and an autopsy would later confirm that he had succumbed to malnourishment and hypothermia. His mother, Shanda Vander Ark, and his 21-year-old brother, Paul Ferguson, were both arrested and charged with his murder. Evidence presented in court included testimonies, physical proof of neglect and abuse, and detailed accounts of the events leading up to the tragic incident. But what most captivated public attention and sparked widespread debate was the closer examination of Shanda's conduct during the trial. During her testimony, Shanda claimed that she gave Timothy a warm bath just before he was found dead. It was a claim that was disputed by her older son, Paul. In fact, it would be revealed that hours before Timothy's death, Paul had allegedly put Timothy in an ice bath for nearly 9 hours.
Let's move up to the day before your brother passed away. Do you remember the day before your brother died?
He was unresponsive when I was told to get him up.
So you were given some instructions to wake him up in the morning?
Yes.
Was your mother already at it?
Yes.
Were the cameras activated at that point, though?
Yes.
So your responsibility when you had to go wake him up was what? Just to do what? To get him up?
Just wake him up, which normally wasn't difficult before then.
And this is the day before he passed away, but was it difficult on that day?
Very.
Did you scream at him and yell at him to get him to try to wake up?
Yes.
And at some point were you instructed to do something with him because he wouldn't wake up?
Put him in an ice bath.
And did you do that?
Yes.
Was he able to... Where was he sleeping that night?
Closet.
So when you went to wake him up and he was unresponsive, was he still in the closet?
Yes.
How did you get him from the closet to the bathroom with the...
I had to drag him.
He didn't stand on his own?
He couldn't, no.
Didn't walk on his own?
No.
Was he even talking at that point?
No.
You remember about what time it was that you put him in the ice bath?
Not exactly, no.
If the text message indicated it was around 2 o'clock, does that sound about right?
Yes.
What time did you have to leave for work that particular day?
I was supposed to be at work at 4, but unfortunately, due to a flat tire on my e-bike, I had to wait till 6 for my mother to get home and drive me to work.
So from 2 to 6 until your mother got home, you were home with Timothy, is that right?
Yes.
And where was Timothy that entire time that you were home with him?
In the bath.
in the ice bath? Was your mother giving you instructions on what to do with him while he was in that tub then, at that point in time?
Yes, sir.
What was she telling you to do?
Make him uncomfortable, and at one point she had me heat up a pizza roll to see if he would be responsive to enticement.
Did you actually do that?
Yes.
And what did you, so describe for the jury exactly what you did with that pizza roll with Timothy in the tub.
I held it close, and when he responded, as per instruction, I was to pull it away from him.
So did you actually do this?
Yes.
So you actually held a pizza roll in front of him to see if he would respond. Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
I know it's difficult. Did he respond?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do when he tried to respond?
I had to, or as I was told, I pulled it away.
So he didn't get to eat the pizza roll?
No.
Do you recall while Timothy was in the tub, an exchange where your mother inquired about pouring hot sauce on his private parts?
I do, yes.
Did you do that?
No. That was beyond as everything else was.
So you put him in the tub around 2. Did your mom come home at 6?
Yes.
And when your mom gets home at 6, did you go to work at that point in time?
She drove me to work, yes.
And was Timothy still in the tub at that point in time?
Yes.
So you and your mom drove to Grand Haven to drop you off at work, and Timothy's just in the tub?
Yes, sir.
Was he even physically able to move around at that point in time?
No.
Do you recall getting a text message from your mother around 11:30 or so that night while you were at work?
Yes.
And
Though I saw it later than that because I was busy.
so you received the text message, but you didn't actually read it until a little bit later than it was received.
Yes, sir.
And what did you understand from that text message from your mother about where Timothy had been up until the time you were at work at 11:30 at night?
Still in the tub.
So that's 9 hours plus from the time that you first put him in the tub at 2 o'clock?
Yes.
While on the stand, prosecutor Matt Roberts pressed Shanda for details on the use of ice baths as a form of punishment.
Thank you. Ms. Vander Ark, I think we're just finishing up. I was just talking about the ice bath with you. And again, your text was, let him know that if he tries to sleep at all, he'll get another ice bath sometime before you leave for work and another when I get home. So let's break apart that sentence for just a moment if we can. And that was on March 27th. Right, so yeah, about 9 days or so before Timothy passes away. Let him know that if he tries to sleep at all, let's start there. This is at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're saying he is not allowed to go to sleep, right?
Yes, sir.
So 3 o'clock in the morning, your 15-year-old child is not allowed to be sleeping. And if he does, he gets an ice bath, right?
Yes, sir.
And he'll get another ice bath, i.e. there's already been an ice bath prior to this text being sent, correct?
No, sir. That was, it would be one and then another is what it says.
Okay, well, let me read it again and make sure maybe I misread it. Let him know that if he tries to sleep at all, he'll get another ice bath sometime before you leave for work and another when I get home. There's 2 anothers in there, isn't there?
Yes, sir.
The first another refers to the first ice bath. In other words, there's already been an ice bath, right?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not questioning what's in the text, but I don't know.
Okay. And then sometime before Paul leaves for work, he'll get another ice bath, and then another one when you get home. So 2 ice baths, in addition to the one he's already had, right?
If that's what it says.
And that's for the crime of sleeping.
I don't know what the original, whatever happened before that.
But you know what it was to get him to not do another one, right?
Yes, sir.
Let him know that if he
That's what it
tries
says.
to sleep at all.
That's what it says. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Might want to toss the ice that is made into some Ziploc bags in the freezer tomorrow for if we need a bunch more. I think that kind of speaks for itself. We'll move on.
The prosecutor begins by specifically referencing a text message sent by Shanda. The message instructs Paul to let Timothy know that if he tries to sleep, he will receive an ice bath before Paul leaves for work and another upon his return. The prosecutor methodically breaks down the message, establishing that there had already been one ice bath, with the threat of more in time, emphasizing the premeditated nature of the abuse. Shanda's responses are short and affirmative. Her strategy seems to be one of minimal engagement, with little attempt to provide context or justification for her actions. Her occasional attempts to introduce doubt or downplay the premeditation of her actions are largely ineffective against the prosecutor's detailed line of questioning. Instead, they implicate her unwillingness or inability to directly address the severity of her actions.
Okay, start at page 5340, and this is from May 9th. I don't think you need to read the top one. That's Paul's message. Go ahead and start reading there from May 9th, 2022.
What is daddling anyway? Please make sure Timothy goes into his room with the alarm on when you leave. I should be home not too long after you go, as long as you before you go. And please let me know where you put the alarm when you leave.
All right, let me stop you right there. This is May 9th. And again, you're referring to an alarm, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is, okay.
Go ahead.
I know what that's referring to.
Let's keep going. Sorry.
KK, thanks. YW, you're welcome. I logged out of that for you, but you will not be allowed to have any devices tomorrow before work unless you manages to get everything done I assign to M standards, which will not be easy. I'm not sure what part of Timothy going nowhere but the bathroom without being watched closely, but he stole a bunch more of the Easter basket today and hid the wrappers behind the washer and dryer because he obviously wasn't washed as he should have been.
Okay, so at this point on May 9th, you're saying that Timothy needs to be watched if he goes everywhere except for the bathroom, right?
He needs to be watched, yes, sir.
For committing the crime of what?
We had a combined Easter basket that year, and so I had divvied it out between everybody, and he stole some that was G's, and I don't remember if it was Paul's or mine, but he'd already had his portion of it.
So taking candy from an Easter basket means that he gets watched and can't have any privacy anywhere except the bathroom, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, keep going.
It was a star. What part of watching Timothy closely was unclear? Sheesh.
Let me stop you right there. What part of watching Timothy was unclear? Why was it that you believed at that point that Paul wasn't watching Timothy?
I was correcting, it's the little star. I was correcting what, where was it? Usually if I use the star like that, it was for, to correct something that Siri messed up or something I messed up. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've only got these messages. I'm not sure.
Okay, but the part that you read there said what again?
What part of watching Timothy closely was unclear? Sheesh.
Okay, so you were upset at that point that Paul wasn't watching Timothy closely enough, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the only way you would know that Paul wasn't watching Timothy closely enough is if you were also watching Timothy closely enough, correct?
I don't know at that point. I don't know if somehow I found out about the Easter basket. Hold on. Okay, yeah, we must have been at a baseball game. It was 6:20 p.m., 6:43 p.m. So yeah, I must have been watching him from.
So you're at a baseball game for G and you're watching Timothy and Paul to make sure Paul's watching Timothy closely enough. Correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you remember all this text exchange?
No, sir, I don't.
You don't remember this at all?
No.
Okay, go ahead. Read.
Okay, there's no way that was today, Mama. Don't blame me. He
That's
literally.
Paul, right?
Yes.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's Paul, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He literally never had the opportunity to steal anything. I made sure of that.
All right, now your response to that is?
When he was putting clothes on my bed, he did actually. And watch, it's ye tone with me. Should have been the, not ye.
Right. So you knew that Timothy had done something when he was putting clothes away?
Yes, sir.
And the only way you would know that is by monitoring the cameras, right?
Yes, sir. I never gave him permission to even set foot in your room. I swear he must have done it when I went to the bathroom.
Okay, keep going.
He's trying to get me in trouble here,
This
Mom.
is all Paul, right?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
Paul. And I told him to go to his room when I did. I brought him downstairs with me, so his sneaky butt escaped. I watched him go into his room.
And what's your response there?
I said he said he never asked, but I've mentioned before you need to take him downstairs when you go to the bathroom so he can't escape.
All right,
Yes.
Let me just, I think we can stop there. You don't remember sending these text messages?
No, sir.
No memory from this time period
No, sir.
because of all the blackouts, all the tunnel vision, all the PTSD, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As Prosecutor Roberts makes Shanda read out the content of these text messages, he is likely trying to establish inconsistencies in her testimony or to challenge her credibility. His strategy becomes clearer when he challenges Shanda's recall of these events by directly asking if she remembers sending them. Her response, no sir, and the subsequent denial of any memory from this time period due to all the blackouts, all the tunnel vision, all the PTSD, shows Shanda attempting to use these conditions as an excuse for her lack of recollection, when in reality, there was no definitive proof of these diagnoses.
He said he never asked, but I've mentioned before you need to take him downstairs when you go to the bathroom so he can't escape. That was what you said, though, right?
Yes, sir.
You actually used the phrase escape in relation to your 15-year-old child,
Apparently, yes, sir.
as if he was some prisoner.
No, sir.
Well, who else needs to escape but a prisoner? I'll withdraw that. May 9th, right?
Yeah, that's what it said.
You don't remember that at all.
No, sir.
When was Mother's Day 2022?
I don't remember, honestly.
If I told you it was May 8th, would you have reason to doubt that?
No, sir, not at all. I believe you.
Mr. Johnson was asking you, and you were very eager to tell him about something that you remembered happening on sometime just after Mother's Day, right?
Correct.
So Timothy got on a scale and weighed 108 pounds.
104.
104 pounds. I'm sorry, I'm glad you corrected me. I wrote it down as 104 pounds, right? It's amazing your memory is that good that you can remember what your son weighed sometime after May 8th, but you can't remember talking about having him escape. Would you care to explain that to the jury?
Yes, sir. That happened with the PTSD, with everything else that was going on. I would, especially when I got stressed, it would, the tunnel vision and, I mean, I can't, for lack of a better term, blacking out. Pretty much any time my stress level went up, and it wasn't up that day that we did weighed the dog.
So you can't remember all of these text messages about the ice baths and the hot sauce and the zip ties and the handcuffs, but you remember over 18 months ago that your son weighed 108 pounds sometime after Mother's Day of 2022, correct?
104, yes, sir.
104. You got it down. You're right. 104 pounds.
Well, he made a comment that just things like that will stick out to me sometimes. And when he couldn't pick the dog up, bear in mind, this is a service dog in training, so he's used to getting commands. And Timothy, I remember he put his hands on his hips and looked at Sharma and said, "Next time you get to pick me up." And the dog tilted his head like, "I don't understand that command." And that struck me. It sticks in my head. I don't know why, but that sticks in my head.
What day was it?
I don't know what day of the week it was, sir. It was during the week.
How long after Mother's Day was it then?
I don't remember, sir. I know the reason I know it was after Mother's Day is because Mom, my mother-in-law, for probably the last 4 or 5 years, as a Mother's Day gift, has given me cherry tomato plants and then miniature cucumber plants, and I keep them in like plant bags. I normally have a black thumb, I admit it, but I've managed to keep these alive pretty well. And I had just, when I came upstairs to weigh the dog, I had just gone downstairs and checked on my plants. So the plants were outside then, so I know it was after Mother's Day. I just don't know when.
Plants never missed a feeding then, did they?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
What's argumentative about it? She's proud of herself and keeping plants alive.
Plants never.
Mr. Roberts, it's an irrelevant question. So, sustain.
So your testimony is Timothy weighed 104 pounds sometime after May 9th, correct?
Yes, sir.
That doesn't look anything like 104 pounds, does it?
No, sir.
That's not even a month. That's barely a month after May 9th, isn't it?
Yes, sir. I lose weight very quickly. I'm assuming he got that from me.
And again, the response to this was give him bread, right?
If that's what the text message says, yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson asked you about some text messages back and forth between you and Paul during the ice bath, the last day, the day before Timothy dies. And you were observing that ice bath from work, right?
I glanced in on it. I wasn't observing the whole time. I couldn't.
You weren't observing the entire time?
Not the entire time. I glanced in on it.
Whenever you'd send a text message, you were also looking at the camera, weren't you?
No, I wanted Paul to think I was.
And Mr. Johnson asked you if you remember the text about, honestly, tell me if you think this is all fake. Remember that?
Vaguely.
You vaguely remember that text?
Yes, sir.
So you can remember the text where it tries to provide you with a defense to this, but you can't remember any of the horrible things that you did to Timothy. Is that your testimony here today?
I don't have any control over what I can remember and what I don't, sir.
You recall Paul's testimony yesterday about what he did in response to that photograph that he sent you and about saying we really need to feed him, Mama? I think we actually need to feed him, I believe is the actual text.
Yes, sir. I remember his testimony.
And what was his testimony?
That he gave him peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I guess he cooked him some eggs.
That was the first time you heard about that, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And that was not his instructions, was it?
No, sir, but that was fine. I had no problem with that.
Well, why didn't you just tell him to make him some eggs in the first place then?
Because I didn't think of it. I was in the middle of something.
I think we actually need to start feeding him, and the only thing you can come up with, instead of Paul thinking to give him scrambled eggs, is give him some bread. That's all you could think of.
I don't know. I was in the middle of something. I wouldn't have thought of eggs anyway, not in the middle of the day.
You said that you would, the punishments, and I guess this 3 o'clock in the morning one about not letting him sleep or he gets an ice bath, so he's got to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. You said that was because he would keep you guys up in the middle of the night or wake you up in the middle of the night?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Can you, and again, you did really well on the logic and reasoning portion of the LSAT exam. Can you explain the reasoning behind keeping somebody awake when they're keeping you awake?
To show them how it feels.
But they're already awake, aren't they?
It made sense to me, sir. That's now that you ask it, but it doesn't seem to make sense, but it made sense to me at the time.
You didn't actually mean that as punishment. That was just out of spite. You were just angry with Timothy for keeping you awake, weren't you?
No, it was meant as a punishment, sir.
But it's also a punishment for yourself because you have to stay awake as well, don't you?
I don't sleep much anyway, but yes, sir.
Or Paul has to stay awake, right?
Yes, sir. Paul's an insomniac as well.
The contradictions in Shanda's rationale for pushing Timothy are more evident than ever, and the prosecution is poking holes in her story. On one hand, she's punishing Timothy with ice baths to teach him a lesson about disturbing others' sleep, but then claims that she, along with Paul, are insomniacs.
You testified that you gave Timothy a warm bath the night before he passed away, that last night, July 5th. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
That was the first time you've told anybody connected to this case that you'd done that, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You never told the police officers you did that, did you?
No, sir.
I imagine warm bath sounds it's just what it sounds like, right? You got him, you took him to the bath, you drew a warm bath for him, and you put him in the bathtub, right?
Yes, sir.
This is hours before he dies, right?
Yes, sir.
You look like that when you put him in the bathtub?
I'm sorry.
Gotta make me a moment.
Yes. Ms. Vander Ark, do we have a trash can?
I did, I paid some
You did?
trash.
What? Would you like your neighbor moved? All right, please rise.
One of the most highlighted aspects in this trial is Shanda's physical reaction to viewing crime scene photos. Observers, including jurors, legal professionals, and the general public, often scrutinize such reactions for cues about the individual's true feelings and involvement. The perception of insincerity in her response could stem from various factors, impacting the trial's dynamics and the portrayal of her character in the eyes of the court. It's important to note that emotional responses to traumatic stimuli like crime scene photos are highly individual. While one might expect tears, gasps, or turning away in horror, not everyone responds to grief and shock in the same way. Some may freeze, others might express anger, and some might not visibly react at all in the moment, only to process their emotions privately later. The challenge in a trial setting is that atypical or subdued emotional responses can be misinterpreted as insincerity. However, it's safe to assume, given the overwhelming evidence and the fact that Shanda had visibly seen the state that Timothy's body was in when he died, that under the gaze of jurors, there is a desire to paint herself as the victim.
Mr. Roberts, you can continue.
Thank you. Before we get back to the question I originally asked Ms. Vander Ark, you just obviously had quite a visual reaction there to the jury, a physical reaction in front of the jury looking at those photographs. That's not the first time you've seen these photographs, though, is it?
No, sir.
In fact, you sat in this very courtroom not even a week ago on Friday when we had a hearing about those photographs and looked at those photographs, didn't
I
you?
did not look at them last week, sir.
You didn't look at them last week?
No, sir, I did not.
But you've looked at them before, haven't you?
I think it was at the prelim, and I gagged that day too. It just wasn't as bad.
Didn't throw up, though.
No, it wasn't as bad.
So if there's video from that hearing that we had last week where you thumbed through the photographs, including the autopsy photos without vomiting, do you just not remember that as well?
We didn't have the autopsy. We didn't have those photos over at our table, sir. It won't be on the video, I can promise you that.
Well, then I'll return to my original question. Those 3 photographs depict your son hours after you supposedly put him in a warm bath. Did he look like that when you put him in the warm bath, but for the fact that he was alive?
I did not look at him, sir. He was 15. I tried to give him his privacy. It may sound lame, but I intentionally look away. That's why Paul did most of his baths, is because he's 15 and I didn't think that was appropriate.
So you didn't put him in the bathtub?
No, he was already in the tub. I just looked.
Did you get him out of the tub?
I don't remember. I think so later that night. I would assume so.
Later that night? How long was he in the tub?
Well, night to me is any time after work. So
Okay. How long was he in the tub?
I don't think it was long after I got home, but I don't know.
And again, you didn't tell the police officers this when they talked to you about what had happened the night before, did you?
I don't remember. Apparently I didn't.
Well, so you don't remember what you told the police officers?
I remember part of it, but if you say I didn't tell them, then I trust your word there.
If you told the police officers that you noticed he was skinny, so you made him some bread and put some butter on it and watched him eat 3/4 of it and then sent him to bed, does that refresh your recollection about what you told the officers?
I hear what you're saying. I don't remember saying it, but
So you don't remember saying those things to the police officer?
no, sir.
And those things clearly didn't happen, did they?
No, sir.
How did he get into his room that night?
I don't remember, sir.
Last page of the text messages. You can go ahead and read that very top text message, please.
Please set your alarm for 6 a.m. I ended up dragging him back to his small room because I wasn't going to risk him having access to the tub or other things overnight. He's still trying to be stupid, but I will tell you more tomorrow while I take you to work, describing how many different ways I proved that he's still faking. He's still doing it, though. It's beyond ridiculous.
I ended up dragging him back to his small room because I wasn't going to risk him having access to the tub or other things overnight. Plan was for him to sleep in the bathroom, wasn't it?
I don't remember, sir. I know that in the text message, but if that's what the text message says.
Okay. And you had to drag him back to the small room. Again, the small room being the closet, right?
Yes, sir.
Supposedly that he wanted to sleep in.
Yes, sir.
But you had to drag him there. Why was that?
Well, dragging, that could be anywhere from grabbing hold of an arm and because someone's not being cooperative. That can be a range of things, sir. So I don't know what I was referring to there.
You've seen the video, haven't you?
No, sir. I haven't seen any videos.
Do you need your memory refreshed about him getting back in the small room that night?
No, sir. Like I said, I don't remember actually doing it.
Did you physically pull him into the room that night?
Yes, sir.
And did you push him down onto the ground so that he was laying and facing the camera?
If that's what it shows, then yes, sir.
And did you position his face towards the camera?
If that's what it shows,
And did you tell him that he owes you the biggest apology on the face of the earth and then maybe he can get out to go to the bathroom?
If that's what it shows, sir, I don't remember.
And did you return a little while later because he had rolled over away from the camera so that you couldn't see him on camera?
If that's what it shows, I don't remember any of this.
And did you tell him you don't need to open your mouth every time you breathe, dummy, and then hold his mouth shut?
I don't know what I said, sir. I mean, I'll take your word for that's what the video
Oh, you don't have to
says.
take my word for it. Let's play the video for you.
Sir, that's not necessary. That's what you're saying it shows. I believe you. I'm
So
not.
you're acknowledging that the night before Timothy died, hours before he died, you dragged him, looking like that, back into his small room, positioned him in front of a camera, told him he owed you an apology, then came back later because he rolled over away from the camera and held his mouth closed and said, see, you don't have to open your mouth when you breathe, dummy? You're acknowledging you did those things.
If that's what the camera shows, yes, sir.
You didn't put him in a warm bath that night, did you?
Yes, sir, I did.
But you had to drag him away from it?
If that's what it says, I don't. I know that I know he had a hoodie on.
You said the locks on the refrigerator were there because he got into the refrigerator, and if I heard your testimony correctly, he ate a pound of frozen hamburger?
Yes, sir. That was back.
And a bag of chicken nuggets?
A frozen bag of chicken nuggets, yes, sir.
And frozen hamburger.
Yes, the hamburger was not frozen; it was refrigerated.
But frozen chicken nuggets.
Frozen chicken nuggets and raw bacon.
And raw bacon.
Yes, sir.
Frozen raw bacon?
No, it was in the refrigerator.
The frozen stuff was the chicken.
The chicken nuggets. That was the only frozen. Yes, sir.
Did you think he had an affinity for frozen food?
I didn't know the frozen. The only thing he ate frozen was the chicken nuggets.
Is that why you sent a text message to Paul while he was in the ice bath at 3:43 that afternoon and said, oh, okay, crazy thought. Tell him if he actually sits up by himself and stays sitting up, he will get some pizza rolls. Don't tell him it's only 2, and I'm okay if they are frozen rather than cooked. Why'd you send that text message?
I don't know.
Don't remember that even either?
No, sir.
So you're not worried about him eating frozen pizza rolls if he sits up?
If that's what it says.
You've heard it read several times.
Yes,
You're not
sir.
doubting that's what it says, right?
Yes,
Just another one of those memories that you just gone from your head, right?
sir.
So when you told Detective Peasky that the reason the locks were on the refrigerator is because he would get into them and he'd leave the doors open, that was a lie, wasn't it?
No, that was also true. He did that as well.
How does putting locks on fix that problem?
He can't get into it then, so it doesn't get left open.
Oh,
No,
so,
he was the only
so
one.
you admit that he was not allowed access to the refrigerator or the freezer or to the pantry?
As far as the refrigerator and freezer, after we put the locks on.
He couldn't get into them, could he?
No, not after that.
And the pantry had an alarm on it as well, didn't it?
No, it didn't.
Okay. We'll move on. We can circle back to that one. Let's talk about some of the other things that you told Detective Peasky. You told Detective Peasky that long after the stroke happened in January, Timothy went on a hunger strike. That was a lie, wasn't it?
Not long after. And no, that was not a lie. That was the truth.
He went on a hunger strike.
Yes, sir, he did. It wasn't immediately, but it was within a few days.
And a hunger strike is refusing to eat, right?
Yes, sir.
So he's refusing to eat food not long after your husband has his stroke, right?
Yes, sir.
Then you don't need to put locks on the refrigerator or freezer, do you? If he's refusing to eat.
He stopped. He started eating again.
He started eating again, so then you decided he's been on a hunger strike, he's eating again, so now we better lock up the food.
No, I did the locks to protect him because he could have killed himself eating the chicken nuggets. I didn't put the locks on after he did the hamburger or the bacon, but the chicken nuggets, it was raw chicken.
Chicken nuggets are cooked, aren't they? They're pre-cooked.
Are they? I didn't even think about that.
But it's okay if he has a frozen pizza roll or two if he sits up, right?
Yes, sir.
In one of the few times during the trial, Shanda shows emotion. She seems to get choked up talking about how Timothy could have died eating frozen chicken nuggets. The prosecutor is quick to mention that frozen chicken nuggets are pre-cooked. What follows is a probing line of questioning that focuses on the severe measures taken to restrict Timothy's access to food.
February 18th, 2022. Find out what he has snuck right the heck now. Because I know he has snuck all stuff since you weren't doing what you were supposed to. What do you mean you didn't know he was awake? You both should have been awake at 10:30. I am not happy. You know he wasn't just sitting there. Check the brownies in the kitchen. Check everything not locked away. Check where the flipping keys have been. So starting February, you had to lock up all the food. Make sure he's not getting into the brownies, right?
All of the food was never locked. There's no pictures of it, but one of the lower cupboards had quite a bit of canned food in it. And he actually would get into that and eat stuff out of cans as well. But there was never a lock on that lower cupboard. I don't know if I know they took pictures of it because I showed it to them.
So he had access to one cupboard of food?
The pantry wasn't locked the whole time. I know that.
So there were times the pantry was locked or had an alarm on it, wasn't there?
There was no alarm. I never got one for the pantry. I've heard the text messages. I don't remember there being a lock on the pantry, but I've heard
228, check his breath. I can almost guarantee he's eaten something. He was chewing on something when he walked downstairs. You and I will be talking about this on a later date when we're both home. Paul's response, yes, he grabbed some chips. I know. So he wasn't allowed to eat chips on 228 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Couldn't have some chips, right?
I mean, I don't know what happened in that situation.
Well, you didn't say, make sure he didn't get into the frozen chicken nuggets because it might kill him. You said, find out what he's been into, and Paul says he's been into chips, right?
That's what it says, yes, sir.
So I imagine the next text message then is, oh, great, that's fine, he can have some chips.
Well, no, the point of it was he was sneaking things. He knew better.
Couldn't have chips.
It wasn't that he couldn't have chips. It was that he would sneak things. It was dishonest.
How would he earn getting chips?
He didn't have to earn them. All he had to do was ask. I was trying to teach him not to sneak. He snuck. It wasn't just food. He would sneak in the garage. He would sneak toys. He snuck around and messed with his baby brother's homeschooling materials. I've got like flashcards and stuff for him. He messed with those and got them all out of order.
Shanda's responses to the prosecutor's inquiries reveal a notable attempt to cast Timothy in a negative light, presenting him as a child who frequently engaged in sneaking around and disobeying rules. Her justification for the punitive measures she took is grounded in a portrayal of Timothy's behavior as dishonest and problematic, emphasizing instances where he would sneak food, toys, or interfere with his siblings' homeschooling materials.
March 4th is around the time that you acknowledged that he was in zip cuffs. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but I don't think we clarified your final text message where you said, you know what? We will start cutting off the ends once they are tight, so he can't do that. Is that one of the can't remember texts too?
Yes, sir.
March 19th. Okay, that only makes partial sense. What did he grab? LOL. Paul's response, I don't know, chips or something small he had in his pocket. Okay, tell him he just restarted his not eating again. That was you. March 19th. Tell him he's just restarted his not eating again. So he took chips. So the punishment for that is now he's not allowed to eat anything again, right?
I don't remember, sir.
Don't remember that one. Okay. Talking about the punishment outside. Paul says, wall sits question mark, and then you say, push him until it looked like he is about to fall over, please. That was for running up and down the stairs, wasn't it, on April 14th?
If that's what it says, yes, sir.
So you wanted Paul to run him up and down the stairs until he was ready to fall over.
That's what the text says.
What crime had he committed to warrant being physically driven until you fall over?
I have no idea, sir.
April 18th. He managed to come upstairs, yank the locks off of both the freezer and the pantry without you noticing, and he stole a bunch of crap that squished and rattled and did all sorts of stuff, and you slept through everything. KK, no devices until tomorrow, at least my lunch other than messaging me, which would be very little. Remember that?
I don't remember it, no, sir.
So, but if the text message said he yanked the locks off the pantry, then there were locks on the pantry as of April 18th, right?
Apparently.
Shanda frequently claims not to remember details, likely feigning forgetfulness when confronted with her actions and consequences.
$4.26, almost freaking caught him again. I want all the food in the fridge, freezer, or pantry, and those locked. So locking up all the food again on April 26th, correct?
Well, the cupboard still was never locked.
And what was in the cupboard?
A bunch of canned stuff. There's a bunch of cans in there.
Bunch of cans in there?
Yeah.
So you're okay with him getting into a bunch of canned stuff?
I mean, he got into it all the time.
So what do you go to the drawer, get a can opener, open up the can, put it on the stove, warm the stuff up?
No, he didn't. He would eat it straight out of the can.
But that didn't worry you.
Weird. Huh?
That didn't worry you?
Well, when I discovered it, it did, but I just never put anything on that cupboard.
So what caused this almost freaking caught him? I want all the food in the fridge and the freezer, the pantry, those locked up, April 28th.
I have no idea, sir. Without having it in there, I don't know what caused it.
It's likely related to the text before that, isn't it?
I don't know.
He keeps pulling his arms down, and that doesn't set off the camera alarm, so please watch him for that. Well, why did he have his arms up?
He was standing against the wall with his arms on his head.
So he'd have to do that for long periods of time, right?
Stand there, but he didn't have to have his arms up the whole time, but I'd set a time limit on how long he had to have his arms up.
And you're watching or watching an alarm to make sure his arm doesn't go down, right?
From the sound of it.
The response to you about from Paul about locking up the food, it's just he pulled the pantry door lock. What do you mean he just pulled it? Did he take it off? Paul says, yes, that part that attaches to the wall is dangling right now due to sticky locks. Okay, get another one on it right away. Last I saw, they were on the floor in a bag in my room. And you need to make him run up and down the stairs a ton for that, even in the cold and rain. So trying to take some food, not in his cabinet full of canned goods, and pulling the alarm, the pantry lock off, means he doesn't get food, it all gets locked away, and he has to run the stairs, even in the cold and rain, right?
Him being deceitful and sneaky.
He was deceitful and sneaky a lot, wasn't he?
Yes, sir, he was.
Did it ever occur to you it's because he was hungry?
He was that way well before there was issues, well before the stroke. I mean, we always had issues with him over that. His stepmom warned me about that.
Well before the issues. What issues?
Before his first hunger strike, before any of this, he was extremely sneaky.
Did it ever occur to you that this is not the way to deal with a person who's been on a hunger strike? Locking up their food, locking up their access to food, punishing them when they try to take food? Did that ever occur to you with your brilliant legal mind, as it was, that wasn't a good idea?
I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking.
As the prosecutor questions Shanda, she once again attempts to vilify Timothy, emphasizing the trouble he caused, even while facing scrutiny for essentially starving him to death. Timothy died in a brutal and senseless way, and yet she speaks about her own son with contempt. Her lack of empathy and self-serving behavior can be seen as key aspects of narcissistic behavior.
April 27th, Timothy is no longer allowed anywhere near the fridge, freezer, or pantry, or any other place where food is. So now it sounds like he can't even get into his cabinet full of canned goods, right?
I mean, that's what it said. We never there was never a lock on that.
But he wasn't allowed near it.
I mean, if that's what it says, I don't.
That was April 27th. Just a few days before, somehow he manages to be 104 pounds, which, as we've heard from the testimony this morning, is still a good 30 pounds under average weight, right?
Well, my kids most of them are slim. Paul is 6'1" and 130. He doesn't even hit the 134 for a 5'8" person. And I lose weight extremely easily. So at 104, he looked average.
February 14th, I may need some help with it, but I am about to get a lock for the pantry door and a lock for the fridge and both freezers. And then we won't leave any food out of those areas, and he won't have access to unlock those. Okay, Paul's response. Your response, if you disagree, please say so, but he is not going to win this. I may need some help with it, but I'm about to get a... Oh, that's the same thing. So you were bound and determined that he wasn't going to win and get food without asking for permission first, weren't you? Even
No,
if that meant locking up all the food.
No, sir, I was bound and determined he would stop being deceitful and sneaky
He is not going to win this.
because he was being stubborn. He kept sneaking. He snuck stuff. We found out, actually, it was well before the stroke. Paul discovered it. This was before his first hunger strike. I mean, before anything. Paul went down to the downstairs bathroom one day, and I want to say it was at least 3 cupboards, if not 4 across. And I guess he'd opened one of the cupboards, and Timothy had snuck a bunch of stuff. I mean, there was wrappers and cans and all sorts of stuff. He did that. I mean, that was, I don't remember if it was before or after my oldest son's wedding, but it was around that time.
And again, your response to all of this, rather than to seek some professional help for him, because of these eating issues that he apparently has, is to restrict even further his access to food, right? And then watch his every move on a camera or with a motion sensor or with an alarm, right?
My response was to try to prevent him from being deceitful and sneaky.
April 28th, do you want to have just the one on the pants for tonight? When I leave, you will have to have both of them on so it doesn't get away with anything. So by April 28th, you were putting multiple alarms on his person, weren't you?
If that's what it says, I didn't realize I even owned more than one. I only remember ordering one.
Shanda's insistence on seemingly trivial contradictions, like the presence of canned foods in the house, underscores a profound need to assert her correctedness, even in contexts that highlight her grave actions. This compulsion to be seen as right, even when faced with evidence of wrongdoing, suggests a deep-seated aversion to acknowledging fault.
Okay, take off the arm one, but warn him that I will count how many times he moves his arm from the camera picking it up, and he'll be doing stairs for that tomorrow. That's at 11 o'clock in the evening on 4/28. So you're watching to see how many times he moved his arm when he was in his room?
How many times he dropped his, was he in his room?
I don't know. You tell me. I wasn't there.
Against the wall, 'cause
All I can
normally-
do is read you the text message. It says, "Okay, take off the arm one," referencing back to the alarms, but warn him that I will count how many times he moves his arm from the camera picking it up, and he will be doing stairs for that tomorrow.
That
He's not sneaking around there, is he?
No, he was up against the wall and he was supposed to have his arms on his head for a certain amount of time.
Okay, so at 11 o'clock at night, he's supposed
Sometimes.
to be up against the wall, and you want to make sure that he knows you're going to know how many times he moves his arm, and if it's not satisfactory, he gets to do stairs for that the next day.
Yes, sir, apparently.
April 29th. What did he eat? I ate my burger already. Paul's response, he ate the crust. You remember what your response was?
I don't remember. I heard it the other day, but I don't remember sending that.
Go try to make him throw up, please. That was your response, wasn't it?
If that's what it says.
Don't remember?
No,
Just
sir.
put that one in the don't remember category?
Like I said, unfortunately, between January and the time he passed away, I don't have a lot of memories in general of of G, of Timothy, of Paul. I know that there are times that I went over to my in-laws' house and I don't remember a lot of that. It's not just this.
So the crime he committed here, just so we're clear, wasn't sneaking frozen chicken nuggets or a bag of chips. It was eating the crust of what sounds to be an already half-eaten burger or an eaten burger. And your response to that is go make him throw up, please.
That's what it says. And the crime was, again, it's being sneaky and deceitful. It was never about it wasn't about the food. It was because he every time we turned around, he was sneaking something. It wasn't just food. He snuck toys. Like I said, he snuck batteries.
May 5th, did Timothy work hard enough to sleep tonight so you and I can both get some sleep? He will still have to work super hard tomorrow to earn the same, but wanted to ask about tonight first. Do you want to explain how that falls in with your statement that the reason he wasn't allowed to sleep was because he would keep you guys
I
awake?
actually do remember that. Timothy asked if he could trade off not getting to sleep for something else, and I had him doing chores.
There's a lot to unpack in that sentence, so I think I'll just start at the end. So he had to ask for permission to sleep.
No,
Right.
this was because he had kept us up. Like I said before, he had kept us up, so he wasn't going to get to sleep. And he asked if he could trade that punishment for another punishment.
How was that not having to ask for permission to go to sleep, Ms. Vander Ark?
It wasn't because it was a punishment. It wasn't anything about, he didn't have to ask to go to sleep.
Yeah, I'll do something else if you let me sleep, right?
It was trading a punishment for a punishment. That's,
May 16th, where is Timothy? Paul's response, sorry, I was getting dressed. Timothy is on a 5-minute bathroom timer. Well, 4 now. And your response, why is he on a 5-minute timer? He doesn't get 5 minutes. He gets 60 seconds unless he needs to poop, then he gets 2 minutes. He only got to go to the bathroom for 1 minute or 2 minutes, depending on what he had to do?
I don't remember ever enforcing that, but obviously I sent it. But
Doesn't that strike you as, with everything else that happens, it's just cruel and unusual to tell a child, heck, to tell anybody, that you only get a certain amount of time in the bathroom? That doesn't strike you as cruel?
This being argumentative.
It's argumentative.
It certainly is argumentative. She can answer the question, but certainly the way it's phrased is an argument. There's no question there. It's an argument. You're the judge with a question mark at the end.
No, I really want to know if she thinks it's cruel to put somebody on a bathroom timer.
And the relevance of if she thinks it's cruel. It's simply argumentative, Judge.
I don't think it's argumentative. It would tend to give some insight, I suppose, to her intent. If Mr. Johnson, you would like to clarify or have it clarify what her definition of cruel or unusual is so that we're all on the same page with the witness, that's fine. But I think the question can be asked. So the objection is overruled.
So your response to that, well, I want my question answered. Is it cruel to make a child go to the bathroom on a timer?
yes, sir.
May 17th, before I left, when I was having you sign into the camera and turning on the sound for the camera so you would hear the alarm if it went off. And by the way, I told him yesterday that if he did that in the garage again, he would sleep in the garage for a night. So let him know that he would be doing that as soon as the temperatures are safe enough for him to make him do it. So you were going to have him sleep in the garage for a night.
I actually remember that text message, and I was frustrated. I never would have done it, but I was frustrated. I type really fast, and I admit I have a bad habit of saying stuff when I'm upset and then calming down later and it being totally different. But I do remember that, and it never happened.
It didn't happen? What didn't happen? You didn't make him sleep in the garage?
No.
Oh. Yes, thank goodness for that. Same day, 12:53. Did he heat the pancake in a cup? Otherwise, it's just powder, and it's not safe to eat without being heated either. When it actually says, did he hear the pancake in the cup? I assume he meant heat the pancake in the cup, right? Do you remember this text exchange?
Vaguely.
And Paul's response, no, he just ate the powder. And your response, that could make him sick, the dummy. Tabasco in his mouth and make him swallow, and lots of it, and do it every 30 minutes until you leave. This was May 17th. Do you remember this exchange?
I don't remember the Tabasco because I never called it. I said Tabasco.
Tabasco in the mouth and make him swallow, and lots of it, and do it every 30 minutes until you leave.
I don't remember that being a part of it. I remember part of the conversation, but I don't remember that part of it.
Well,
But
Timothy obviously didn't like Tabasco, did he?
We didn't have any Tabasco sauce. That's why it doesn't make any sense. We had hot sauce, but we didn't have Tabasco sauce.
Okay, so the punishment for eating pancake in a cup is Tabasco or some type of hot sauce in the mouth. Is that right?
Sneaking something dangerous. If that's what, if you're asking what he was punished for, it would be for sneaking.
You were concerned for his well-being.
Yes, sir.
Right. That's why you're having this text exchange, right?
Yes, sir.
You're really concerned for him at that point.
Yes, sir. Those pancakes in a cup had, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, but I think they had eggs in them.
That could make him sick, the dummy. Do you always refer to him as a dummy when you're worried about him?
No, sir. You can look at the text messages. I hardly ever said anything like that.
hardly ever said anything like that? It's not a good idea to call a child a dummy, is it?
I never would to him. I was frustrated, like I said.
Rather than acknowledging her actions, Shanda has a concerning tendency to deflect responsibility, claiming she was simply frustrated.
Later on in that same text exchange, Paul says he also crapped himself. And your response is, what? In his pants? Seriously? Paul, I told him to take a 5-minute shower. Make him do the work in the garage with nothing on below the waist. Just make sure the garage door stays closed, and then he can stand down against the wall with nothing on below the waist until you leave. Just please make sure G does not go downstairs at all while he's standing there like that. Break that up again. So make him do the work in the garage with nothing on below the waist. So his punishment for having an accident was that he had to do chores without pants and underwear on, right?
If that's what it says, I don't remember this.
That's pretty humiliating, isn't it?
I mean, he was by himself. It wasn't, I don't remember this at all, sir.
You don't remember that at all.
No, sir.
But you did have the presence of mind at that time that says, just make sure the garage door stays closed because you don't want anyone seeing him doing that, do you?
Well, I didn't want the garage door open ever because we had a lot of stuff out there. So.
And then he can stand against the wall with nothing on below the waist until you leave. So in addition to cleaning the garage, then he has to stand against the wall with no pants and underwear on, correct?
I mean, if that's what it says, I don't remember this.
Please make sure G does not go downstairs at all. Don't remember that either.
No, sir.
Didn't want, but you physically typed these words into your phone and sent them to Paul to make sure that G doesn't see Timothy like that, right?
Yes, sir.
His clothes need to be washed right away, but he gets to be without anything below the waist for a while today. Did he say why the heck he did that? And Paul's response is he said he didn't want to disturb anyone. He had to ask for permission to go to the bathroom, didn't he?
No, sir, not usually. If he was on the wall, he did. Because he was supposed to be standing still.
Just handcuff transactions, we've talked about that. So let's get back to your statement to Detective Piesky. You didn't tell the detective about the warm bath, but you told him that you realized how skinny he was the night before and threatened to take him to the ER if he didn't eat. That's not true, is it?
No, sir.
And you didn't make him a piece of toast and give it to him and make him eat it, did you?
No, sir. I have no idea why I said that. I was traumatized. I actually didn't come out of the first month I was in jail. I wish the Lydia that used to work for the public defender's office visited me, and she said it was pretty obvious that I was under severe trauma. Mm-hmm. I didn't eat for my first month.
This was while they were searching your house on July 6th while you were sitting in your house.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking, oh, I better call him. Yeah, he looked a little skinny last night, and I thought I should take him to the ER and then make some toast with butter on it and watched him eat it, and he walked away. None of that happened, did it?
No, I don't even remember that.
But you had the presence of mind to lie to the officer at the time when he was investigating.
When he finally started eating, and he was.
But he did eat last night, you said?
Yes. He had some toast with butter on it. That's what he had. That's all he wanted to eat. He said his stomach was a little upset and he didn't want to eat anything else. Oh my gosh. You want to go check on the other kids?
Yeah, you can do that for sure.
I know my 20-year-old's got my 7-year-old, but still.
Nope, that's.
Oh. Okay, here. I'm sorry, Slaughter Joe. Sorry. Oh my God. I knew I should have made him eat, but he just looked. Did you notice he was covering up with your clothing? You didn't notice, never mind. I love you, dear, but you never noticed it.
Do you have a picture of him before he started losing weight?
Yeah. See first. I see pictures of him. For a teenager.
You doing all right? Yeah, it's almost like you're in a daze. Like you don't know what's real and what's not. Hey, have you been talking to him at all recently?
I talked to him yesterday morning to get him up.
That's great. This is when we started.
Okay, so how long ago?
Did you know that he was in this hunger strike?
I think
I mean,
did I tell you or not? I don't know if I did or
no,
not.
I don't think you did.
Because he's skin and bone.
I know, and I just, how did he?
He's really.
Well, he doesn't communicate with Tim hardly at all. Like, they say hi and they don't, yeah.
Like I said, I was traumatized. I don't know. I don't remember this, sir.
He wouldn't come upstairs when she said goodnight. She walked down to the last couple of stairs and asked for a hug and a kiss. That didn't happen either, did it?
I don't remember. I mean, I would assume not, but I don't remember.
In fact, you're acknowledging that video that shows you dragging him into a small room, looking like he does when he dies, calling him a dummy for breathing with his mouth open, is actually what you did to him the night before he died, right?
If that's what it shows, I don't remember, sir.
Your statement to Detective Peasky continues. She got ready for work in the morning and went to check on him. She said his name, but he did not respond. She put her hand on his chest and he was not breathing. She remembered her 20-year-old son, Paul, helping her get him off the bed. That was all a lie, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
You know where he was when you found him that morning, right?
In the closet.
In the small room. And prior to that, you told Officer Stephanie, well, it was about 5:30. He fell out of bed and I had to go and put him back into bed. Also a lie, right?
Yes, sir. I have no idea why I said that, sir. Like I said, I was traumatized.
You told Detective Peasky that Timothy stated he was on a hunger strike 2 weeks ago. This is 2 weeks before he dies. He goes on a hunger strike.
Yes, sir.
Did he go on a hunger strike?
Yes, sir, he did.
Show me the text message between you and Paul where it says that he's on a hunger strike.
I don't know if I ever texted him about it, sir. We talked about it, but I never texted. I mean, if it's not in there, we didn't text about everything.
You never texted Paul about him being on a hunger strike.
No, I would have told him that in person. I wouldn't have said that over text message. That would have been important.
But Paul has to watch him for the day when you're not home, right?
Yes, sir.
So it'd be Paul's responsibility to get him some food, right?
Yes, sir.
So while he's on a hunger strike, instead of talking about the hunger strike, your response to that is give him 4 slices of bread with hot sauce on it, and if he eats them and waits 30 minutes, he can eat 4 without. Right?
I don't know what day that was, sir, if you're...
Let's find it and make sure.
I mean, we tried to, just because he
with-
wasn't eating, we tried to feed him. That was...
And the best solution you come up with is force him to eat the bread with hot sauce on it. That was the response to the hunger strike?
I don't remember. I mean, it wasn't, we tried to feed him. That's all I remember.
So when would that hunger strike have started?
End of June, late June.
Again, you never looked at the bone thin photo to see what kind of condition he was in before he goes on this hunger strike, right?
Yes, sir.
And did it ever occur to you, like, he's on a hunger strike now? And I know Paul had sent me that text about, he's bone thin. I think we actually need to feed him. We need to actually feed him. It never occurred to you that maybe you should go back and look at that text message now and see what condition he was in at the time?
No, sir. With me, when something's out of sight, it's out of mind. Once that's scrolled up, I don't scroll back in the text messages.
Out of sight, out of mind. That applies to Timothy as well, doesn't it?
That applies to a lot of things, sir. It's not just, if
Not
Little Man
just
wasn't,
Timothy.
no, if Little Man was not in front of me right then I wasn't necessarily thinking about him. Paul wasn't.
June 19th, you can do his bread with hot sauce at any time, though preferably sooner rather than later. Put more hot sauce on than you did yesterday, please. And he has to eat at least 3 slices with hot sauce, but he may have more as long as they have plenty of hot sauce on him. That was June 19th. Was he on his hunger strike then?
I would assume not. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an exact date.
That was about 2 weeks before he passed away, and that's when you said the hunger strike started. Is that right?
Yes, sir. But
Did it occur to you that the hunger strike was because he didn't enjoy eating bread with hot sauce on it?
did it occur to me? No, sir, because he did it way back in January, and that wasn't the case.
June 21st, how is everything? Did you make him eat his bread with hot sauce? Yeah, and that's when it's he gets 4 with hot sauce and then 4 more 30 minutes. That was June 21st. You don't know if the hunger strike started there then?
I don't know, sir. Like I said, I can only guesstimate. That's the only reason I remember the 3 weeks the first time around is because it was right after the stroke, and he started eating again before the end of January.
Right. Did you think he's on a second hunger strike now? I really need to get him some treatment for this.
Did I think along those lines? No, sir. He admitted to being, he told us very early on after the stroke that he was taking advantage of that because we didn't have the extra set of eyes with my husband, and he was being difficult. He actually, Timothy told me that his dad and stepmom used to let him get away with everything. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I've always been the stricter parent anyway, and he told me on multiple occasions that if he thought that if he pushed me hard enough that I would just quit making him do stuff and I wouldn't make him cooperate.
All right. Well, here's an exchange from June 29th. Maybe this can shed some light on the hunger strike feeding situation. Trust me, I know he's thin. Trust me, I know he's thin. That was your text, no? Paul's. You sent
I
Paul
don't
that
remember the
right?
text, but I mean,
You don't remember that one either?
no, sir.
Trust me, I know he's thin. That being said, he told me a week and a half ago that he wanted to be thin to make me feel bad for punishing him. You don't get to grump at him for that, though I already lit into him plenty for it. Is this while he's on his hunger strike?
I mean, I would assume so. Yes, sir.
This is June 29th. This is
Yes,
about
sir.
8 days before he died.
Yeah, I would assume so.
And Paul's response is, of course he did. And your response to that is, yeah, so while I want to fix it, he will get most of his calories from plain bread and rice for, pulling that. He will get plenty of calories, but not get to enjoy them that way, That doesn't sound like somebody who's on a hunger strike to me. Can you clarify that for me, please?
I don't remember, but I know he wasn't eating. There was.
It continues on. KK. So yeah, we'll tell you more about what he can eat later, June 29th.
Just because we offered him food doesn't, we offered him food when he was on the hunger strike in January. At least I did. I would assume Paul did as well. But just because you offered stuff, you couldn't, even though it says try to force him to eat, you couldn't force him to eat stuff. If he didn't.
You heard Paul's testimony yesterday that he had to force him to eat the bread with hot sauce on it, didn't you?
Yes, sir. I don't know what he means by that.
It's interesting you use the phrase, we tried to tempt him with food. That came up while he was in the ice bath, didn't it? Tempting him with food.
Do you mean the day before he passed?
Yes.
If I said yes, sir.
You told Paul to heat up some pizza rolls because Jean needed the pizza rolls anyway, right? You remember that?
Yes, sir.
I
I don't remember the text message.
Don't remember. So this falls in the I don't remember category as well. Is that right?
Like most of it.
Well,
Yes,
the
sir.
text message says, heat one up, hold it in front of him, but be ready to pull away if he tries to grab it. You don't remember sending any of that?
I don't remember it. No, sir.
You heard the text messages read yesterday, correct?
Yes, sir. I did.
Is it fair to say that you just don't remember those text messages?
Most of them, I don't remember.
Most of them?
Yeah. But then you've got your big bind. I can pretty much guarantee I don't remember most of that either. I don't. And it's not just my text with Paul.
You don't remember anything.
No, sir, I don't.
But somehow you were able to hold down a job as a judicial clerk during that time period, right?
Yes, sir.
You were able to at least provide dog training to one client at that time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you remembered to tell Paul to get up and walk Sharma just about every morning, didn't you?
That would be automatic. It would be reflex. If it's in there, then I would assume so. Yes, sir.
That would be reflex. To tell Paul to get up and walk Sharma, is that what you're saying?
If it's a habit, if I do it enough times, then. And plus it served to get Paul out of bed when I left. Because he'd like to go back to sleep.
You told the officer that there was an alarm on the basement door. This is the small closet, because there was some sewing stuff stored in it. That was a lie, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. There was sewing stuff stored in it before he asked to do that, but
But the
I
alarm
don't know why
wasn't-
I told him that.
The alarm wasn't on there because there was sewing stuff on it, was there?
No, sir.
The alarm was on it because Timothy was supposed to be in there, right?
I mean, as far as I know, like I said, I don't.
You don't remember, but you were able to lie to the police officer at the time?
I don't remember talking to the police. I mean, I don't remember this part of the conversation with the police officer, sir.
You tell the officer that there were cameras in the home because G would strip down naked and wander around. Well, that wasn't the only reason the cameras were in the house, was it?
No, sir.
You left out all the other details about that you had to monitor Timothy and make sure he didn't go certain places and sneak places and be deceitful, right? You didn't tell the officer that, did you?
Apparently not. I don't know why I didn't, but
You said he fell out of bed and you went and had to get him and put him back into bed. He never fell out of bed that night, did he?
not as far as I know. I don't remember, sir.
Well, you know he didn't sleep in the bed that night, don't you?
Well, yeah, so I'm sorry.
Saying that you got up at 5:30 and had to put him back in the bed, and then you changed it to 30 minutes because it's sometime with an ending in a 30 because you learned at that point the rigor mortis had already set in and he'd been deceased for a number of hours. That was still a lie, wasn't it?
I mean, yes, sir, I don't remember any of this. I'm sorry.
The hot sauce in the bathroom downstairs was for food. But it wasn't, was it? The hot sauce was for punishment, right?
It was also to put on food.
But you didn't mention that, we also use hot sauce as a form of punishment, did you?
Apparently not.
I'm guessing you probably didn't mention to the officer, we also had the crazy idea yesterday to pour some hot sauce on his penis for a punishment. You didn't mention that either, did you?
Apparently not, sir. Like I said, I don't remember.
You told the officer that you did not restrict Timothy's movement at night with shackles. That was also a lie, wasn't it?
Again, I don't remember, sir. I know we talked about it, but as far as overnight, no.
But you would restrict his movement with shackles, wouldn't you? Whether it was zip ties or handcuffs or leg shackles.
I mean, I can only go back based on the text messages. I don't know.
Why did you wait 20 minutes to call 911 after you found Timothy deceased in the small closet in the small room?
I have no idea, honestly. I learned of that gap, just a couple of days ago. The whole day is surreal to me, so I have no idea why we waited like that. I don't know. I can't imagine waiting, but apparently it happened. I don't know.
Do you remember Paul asking you, should we call 911?
I don't remember asking. Because I was the one that called, and I was the one. I remember performing CPR, and he did help me out a little bit when I got tired to take over a little bit. But I mean, I can't imagine ever saying no to that.
But if it's on the video, that's what you said, right?
If it's on there.
But the video showed that it begins with you with movement outside of the room at about 6:19:21. And 911 is actually called you tell Paul you have to call at 6:37, so that's about 18 minutes, isn't it?
I mean, let's see, 19. Yeah, that's 18 minutes.
And Timothy was never responsive to you, was he?
No, sir.
His eyes were wide open, completely glazed over, weren't they?
As far as I remember, yes, sir.
He never moved, never took a breath, never did anything, did he?
No, sir.
While this is all going on, you tell Paul, we'll have to tell them he was on a hunger strike, right? Remember telling him that?
No, I don't.
Don't remember that either?
No, sir.
You remember telling Paul, or do you remember saying, put his pants on to make it look like he's been this way?
I don't remember saying that.
You remember asking Paul to put the belt on to make it sure that that's the way he looked?
No, sir.
But if they're on video, you said those things,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Ms. Vander Ark, Isn't it true? Timothy had just become nothing more than an annoyance for you, and he wasn't even a human being in your eyes anymore.
That is absolutely not true.
The prosecutor effectively traps Shanda by exposing lies about the night Timothy died and her use of hot sauce as punishment, highlighting her manipulation and deceit. The prosecution methodically dismantles Shanda's narratives, exposing inconsistencies and highlighting her abusive actions. They skillfully reveal her manipulation, setting a strong foundation for their case against her. The defense, on the other hand, would focus on seeking to humanize Shanda amidst the damning evidence.
Thank you, Ms. Vander Ark. You're being called to testify in your own cases. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And to do that, you have to make sure that everyone can understand you, correct?
Yes, sir.
With you, and knowing you as I do, I don't think volume's going to be a problem with you.
Probably not, sir.
Talking fast, maybe.
Yes, sir, it might.
Okay, so this is, are you nervous?
Yes, sir.
This is stressful?
Yes, sir, very.
So questions going to be thrown at you fast and furious. You've seen how trials work, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And under those circumstances, you may speed up again as I do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You may be reminded from time to time to slow down just a little bit. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Let's make sure everyone understands you. You've been sitting through this trial since the beginning, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were arrested for these offenses alleged back when?
July 7th of 2022.
Okay. So you've been living with this thing for more than, 18 months?
17 months, yes,
17 months. So you know what we're talking about, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you understand the allegations against you?
Yes, sir.
And that it also helps that you have a legal background, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The things they said about how well you did in school and all those things, were those all true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want you sitting there and regaling this, but the things about cum laude and going to law school, all that stuff is true.
It was magna cum laude, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. Let's go back to the very beginning. When did Timothy come to your care?
May of 2021.
Prior to that, who had physical and legal custody of Timothy?
My ex-husband.
Okay. And when he sent, and how did it happen that you ended up with custody then?
My ex reached out to me stating that Timothy he could no longer handle him, that he was pushing his buttons, and that he needed to send him to live with me.
Okay. And you agreed to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Had you ever lived with Timothy during his...
When he was younger, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So you agreed to accept him into your home?
Yes, sir.
And who was living in your home at the time?
Myself, my husband, Adam, Paul Ferguson, and then my little man, G.
G. Okay. That's what we've been calling G, correct?
That's really hard to do. Yes, sir.
Okay. Just do the best you can. Okay. So they're all living in your home, and then Timothy joins you, correct?
Yes, sir.
When Timothy's joining you, did your ex-husband ever make any effort to transfer legal custody to you?
We discussed it, but he never did actually sign anything. No, sir.
Okay. And without legal custody, how do you get Timothy into school?
You can't.
And without legal custody, how do you get medical treatment for Timothy?
You can't.
Did your husband at least send I assume he had medical insurance for Timothy. Did he send that?
He did not send me. I requested his medical card, his insurance card, and he never sent it to me.
Now, you heard the testimony that Timothy saw the doctor in 2019. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
That was a year before you received him?
2 years before I received him.
2 years before. So in the prior 2 years before you received him, as far as you know, based on what you heard here, your ex-husband never took him to the doctor?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
How do you know if he had medical insurance for this young man?
He told me he did.
Okay. But he never sent it to you?
No, sir.
Okay. What was your financial situation once Timothy arrived and your husband had a stroke?
After the stroke, we
Yes.
lost my husband's income.
and it was paycheck to pay, not even paycheck to paycheck. Almost everything was paid late. I was struggling. I asked Paul for help with groceries sometimes because we were struggling.
Okay. And Paul was working full-time?
He was working part-time.
He's working at Applebee's?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he's working part-time, and so were you receiving any child support?
No.
So the entire financial burden was on you?
Correct.
Could you have afforded daycare for any of your children?
Absolutely not, no.
And could you have afforded any extra expenses other than the ones that you were providing for?
No.
What type of expenses were you able to provide for this family?
Just basic living expenses.
Rent?
Yes, sir.
Utilities?
Yes, sir.
Food?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The defense brings up Timothy coming into Shanda's care, which reveals important dynamics. Her response to questions about gaining custody can be seen as a possible strategy of deflecting blame onto her ex-husband, potentially absolving herself of responsibility. Shanda's eagerness to mention her own mental health conditions could also be seen as a ploy to garner sympathy or even justify her actions.
That leads to the next question I have for you. You had monitors and cameras in your home, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the impression from the testimony I heard is that it was for the sole purpose of ensuring that Timothy could not get to food. Is that accurate?
No.
Why did you have all those monitors and cameras in your home?
When Timothy came to live with us, his stepmother informed me that they had motion sensors. They weren't as tech savvy as I was. I worked in tech before law school. I worked in tech support for several years. But they had motion sensors and she told me that she didn't sleep at night. She only slept when he was at school because he was into everything. And so because my younger child, he used to, when he was about 2, he would take all his clothes off. So we started putting a camera in his room. And then once we moved to the Marshall Road location, it was bi-level. My husband was born with a disability. My husband was wheelchair bound. So we had an extra wheelchair that we kept on the upper level. That's where the master bedroom was. But that way, if little man, if G was down in his bedroom, my husband could talk to him through the camera and have him come up. It was much easier. My husband could crawl down the steps before the stroke, but we didn't want him to have to crawl up and down those steps.
Okay. And again, let's go back to the issue of food. Was food the only reason why you felt you had to monitor Timothy, or were there other issues?
There were plenty of issues, sir.
Shanda explains the presence of security cameras throughout the house, highlighting their purpose for monitoring Timothy's behavior due to his special needs. The defense further inquires about their role in overseeing food access, subtly addressing concerns that they might have been used to prevent Timothy from taking food. Shanda had equipped the home, including the small closet where Timothy slept, with motion detectors, alarms, and surveillance cameras, framing this setup as a necessary measure for his safety and to monitor his well-being.
So, well, first of all, what we've heard some testimony as to Timothy's special needs. What were his special needs?
He was on the autism spectrum, but he was completely verbal, and he was grade level in school. He was not behind in school at all. He was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. He was diagnosed as bipolar and sensory processing disorder. I heard Paul mention physical disability. He didn't have any. Now, Timothy, when he first got there, said he had a physical disability, and I asked his stepmom about it to make sure, and she said no, he was not coordinated at all. The first summer that he lived with us, my youngest was playing baseball, and Timothy actually mentioned, because we had planned to put him in public high school, I'm going to try out for the baseball team, and I didn't say anything to him, but I remember thinking, sorry, sweetie, there's no way. You don't have the coordination for that.
All right. And he liked to take, well, you tell me, did he like to take things apart?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Can you give some examples?
He took batteries apart. He took toys apart, my youngest son's toys. If he could get a hold of anything from Paul's room, he would take, like, mostly it was Legos. Paul still had Legos. He, at one point, messed with our water heater.
What do you mean?
He actually turned the gas off to the water heater. He knocked out the pilot light and then turned the gas off as well at different points.
Okay.
When asked about his special needs, Shanda has a long list of issues and conditions that Timothy had struggled with. She goes on to mention how Timothy, like many individuals with autism, had a particular fixation. His was breaking things apart in an attempt to understand how it works.
Did you have any concerns as to whether or not his predilections, his desire to get into things might be a safety hazard for either him or somebody else in the home?
I was extremely concerned about that, yes, sir.
So it was your desire was it just your desire to monitor Timothy, or did you also have a younger child in the home that you wanted to monitor?
We had both.
Okay. Who did you want to monitor? One or the other, or both?
Both.
Okay. All right. So you set up these video and audio cameras, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And alarms on the doors?
Those didn't get installed until about 3 weeks before he passed away.
Okay. And motion sensors?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He got around the motion sensors multiple times.
Were you able to stay home and personally monitor your children?
No, I had to work full time.
Okay. How were you able to get Timothy into school?
No, we were not. We tried to enroll him in Mona Shores High School, and Mona Shores told me that my ex, I guess Timothy had damaged a Chromebook in Oklahoma, and because my ex owed money on that, they would not send his records up to us. So we were not able to enroll him. So I found an online homeschool curriculum that I had to monitor, but I enrolled him in that.
Let me make sure I understand. Was it your original intention to put Timothy into public schools?
Yes, sir. We started the process. I filled out the paperwork. Because of my work schedule, I couldn't actually take paperwork to Mona Shores. My husband did that. Adam did that. But yes, we did try to get him enrolled.
Okay. And the youngest child, G, was he in public schools?
No, he was homeschooled.
What about Paul? Do you know if he was homeschooled, or when he got to you, was he still in school?
No, he had graduated high school.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, you mentioned that you weren't able to stay at home and care for your children at home, in the home, as a stay-home parent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what type of? I assume you're out working.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Explain to the jury the work that you did during the period of time that Timothy arrived in your home.
When he first arrived, I was still studying for the bar exam. So my husband was working full time. And I was just doing, I trained dogs on the side, everything from basic obedience up through different types of service dogs for other people. And so I had a couple of dog training clients, but mostly I was studying for the bar exam. I also was an intern here in this courthouse.
That pay a lot of money?
Oh, it was not paid at all, sir.
Okay.
But it was the week of the bar exam. My judge that I worked for here as a law clerk informed me of this position that was open in Nuevo County, and she knew that the judge referred me, and that's when I did the interview, and I started work. I think it was 2 days after I completed the bar exam.
Okay. Was that a paid position?
Yes, it was.
Was it lucrative enough where you didn't have to do any other work?
Well, with my husband's income, it was.
Okay. But your husband's income stopped when he got sick?
When he had the stroke, yes.
Okay. So at that point, was it enough income to provide for you and your family?
No.
Were you receiving any other outside incomes?
My older brother lives in the home that I still own in Oklahoma, and he paid rent to us.
Okay.
But it wasn't a lot. That went towards our house rent.
Child support?
No. My ex, one of the siblings was forgotten yesterday. There's 5 total. We talked about the 4 boys. I also have a daughter. She is now 19, but she stayed down with her dad.
Okay.
So we each had one, so there was no child support. And because of child support on the other 4 kids, I actually was still paying my ex child support. It was still being deducted from my check.
Okay. So you had that's another deduction from your income?
$1,000 a month. Yes,
okay.
sir.
So, were you also doing tutoring when you went to the judge who was paying you? Were you still tutoring or doing any other outside work?
Not at that. I was doing the dog training.
Okay. Let me ask you this. What time in the morning did you leave to go to work?
I usually left the house about 6:30.
And what time on an average were you getting home?
About 6 o'clock.
Okay. So we're talking about 12 hours away from the home.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Those monitors, the video cameras in your home, you were able to view them while at work?
From my phone, occasionally, yes, sir.
Okay. But you were still working.
Yes, sir. I didn't view them at all until after the stroke. I mean, because my husband was there, or we had arrangements where my husband was off certain days of the week. Paul was off one day, specifically one day a week, so he took care of Gabriel and Timothy. And then the other 2 days that I needed care for Gabriel when my husband was working, he actually went to my in-laws' house down in West Olive.
May I approach the witness for just a moment, John? Let's see. You have 3 children at home.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And my understanding is you faced other challenges personally in terms of your personal health.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. For instance, let's run down the list. You have insomnia.
Severe insomnia caused by attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Okay. And for those folks who get a great night's sleep every night, don't understand what insomnia does to your ability to function, can you explain to them what impact chronic insomnia has on a person?
It limits your ability to think clearly. Your energy level is greatly reduced. Takes a lot longer to process things. You forget things easier. It was much harder to function with so little sleep.
Okay. And you talked about your other personal disorders. Were you receiving medications for those?
I was for, I have severe attention deficit hyperactivity disorder combined type. I also have sensory processing disorder and OCD. And then after my husband's stroke, as a result of my husband's stroke, because I viewed him, I wasn't in the room when he had the stroke, but I was there right afterwards. And so I developed post-traumatic stress disorder with disassociation from that. The only medication that I was on was for the ADHD.
Okay. And you had the service dogs in your presence too.
I had one service dog for me, yes.
Okay. What sorts of interventions were available for Timothy's disorders?
When he came to us, he was on medication. They gave us a whole large gallon-sized Ziploc bag of medications for him. I could not refill them because I could not get him to the doctor. We were going to try to adjust his medication because when he came to live with us, when he took his medicine, he was a zombie. It was just horrific. And when Paul came to live with us, because Paul had only been there a year when Timothy moved up. Mm-hmm. And when he was on the same big bag of medication, and there were serious concerns that they just, instead of handling, especially my ex, he wanted to medicate them. But I never got that option because I couldn't take him to the doctor.
Okay. All right. There's been some allegations, there's been some implications, put it that way, that you tried to keep people from seeing Timothy, that you tried to keep him away from public view, that he didn't go to school, he didn't go to the doctor, etc. That he went outside, he was in the backyard. You remember that testimony?
Yes, sir.
If someone's outside in your backyard, are there trees or fences or other obstacles to keep the neighbors from looking over there and seeing who's out in your yard?
No, there was a clearing before. There was woods at the back of the lot, but there was a clearing, and at least the neighbors on each side, there were pretty sizable windows on the back of their homes. Mm-hmm. They weren't I think the next door was a 2-level, but the one on one side was just a single level. It may have had a basement, I don't know. But there was big windows, and they could see into our backyard easily.
Okay. Was it ever your intention to keep people from seeing Timothy?
No, my mother-in-law saw him. They do rental home inspections, I guess the city of Norton Shores. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if it was late April, early May of 2022, but it was in that neighborhood. And so we'd had the inspection that day, and my mother-in-law happened to stop by that day. And I invited her in. We sat and talked, and Timothy wanted to come say hi. So he came up and said hi to her.
Shanda is questioned about the allegations that she had kept people from seeing Timothy, limiting his interactions with the outside world and keeping him out of public school. She explains the reason behind that, but her necessary and detailed reasoning acts as a red flag, hinting at her attempt to deflect or divert attention. It's a behavior often observed in situations where a person feels the need to justify their actions or decisions even when not prompted for such detail. These trivial details are not so much to clarify, but instead to obscure and manipulate the narrative in her favor.
Now you're a Muskegon County transplant, correct? You're
Yes, I'm not from
Okay.
around here.
So and I'm assuming that your direct biological family. There's not a lot of them in this county.
There's no, I don't have, other than my children, I don't have any biological family here.
Okay, how far away are they?
My older brother is in Oklahoma City. And then I have two sisters that I have not talked to in over 20 years, and they live in Alabama, where I'm from.
Okay, so how often do those folks, your bio family, stop by and to see how your sister's doing?
The last time I saw my older brother was when we went down to North Carolina for my oldest son's wedding in October of 2021. And then my brother and sister-in-law drove over from Oklahoma for the wedding as well. We FaceTimed a lot. We watched football games on FaceTime, but I didn't get to see them after we moved up here.
Okay. Do you have a lot of friends in the area that will come by, will stop by on maybe on just happen to be in the area, that sort of thing? They'll come by and visit your home?
Most of my friends were from work, and they actually, because I worked in Newaygo County, they lived in Newaygo or Oceana County or even further. I don't know. I'm not from here. I don't know what county is next to Newaygo east. But I know at least one person from work lived in, I think it's Big Rapids.
Yes.
So no, they didn't stop by because they were too far away.
Did you have a lot of time for social interactions at your home?
No, not at all.
And how about Paul? Did he have friends that he'd bring by, or?
No, he talked about people at work, but he never asked to bring anybody over.
Was he ever given any instructions? You can't have people in this house?
Absolutely not.
And what about the youngest child, G? Did he have any friends for sleepovers or anything like that?
We didn't have any friends over for it. No, he played baseball. Because of me not being able to get out, he didn't get out a lot. I mean, I wish I could have gotten him out more. That's why we put him in baseball, so he could get around other kids more. I had been looking into homeschool co-ops, but with my schedule, I just couldn't do that.
Okay. Which would you say was more impactful in terms of your, get Timothy out of the house? Was it your desire he not get out of the house, or your work requirements?
It was work requirements and his choice. There was, I want to say it was April. The weather was halfway decent. I guess people here there was kids down the street. There was teenagers playing basketball when I came home from the grocery store one weekend. Mm-hmm. And I stopped and rolled my window down and said, "Hey, I've got a 15-year-old at home. Can he come play with y'all?" Even though I knew he wasn't coordinated, I thought he would enjoy it. And they said, "Yeah, sure, absolutely." And he did not want to go play.
Okay. Did he ever request to go play and you denied him?
No, he never did. Actually, Paul, we had mom and dad, my in-laws, got Timothy a bike for his 15th birthday. And Paul and we were on a cul-de-sac. And Paul had tried to teach him to ride the bike.
Okay.
I know they had a few sessions. I don't know how many.
Okay. So on those occasions, he'd be outside.
Oh, yeah, he was out in front of the house in the cul-de-sac.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's talk about some of the things that have come up in this case. There were, okay.
At a pivotal moment, Shanda, perhaps feeling the weight of the conversation, takes a sip of water. This act, while normal, might betray a deeper anxiety. It's a physical manifestation of stress, a subtle signal that she might be seeking comfort in the routine action amidst growing tension.
There are leg irons discovered in your home. Were you aware of those?
I was aware that Paul had them. You actually could look on my Amazon. Paul had the option to do payment on the Amazon as well as mine. Uh-huh. And Paul had actually ordered those under his account.
Okay. You did not order the leg irons?
I did not, no.
Did you ever use them?
No, sir. No, I never instructed.
Let's be in specific. Did you ever use them with Timothy?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever notice any bruising on Timothy's wrists or legs that might be attributable to the use of leg irons?
No, sir. I never saw anything like that.
The discovery of leg irons in the home shifts the narrative towards tangible evidence of mistreatment. When her defense inquires about her knowledge of these leg irons, Shanda acknowledges them, but explains they were for her son, Paul, and purchased online.
You heard Paul talk about plastic ties. What was that about?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
I don't know why we would order. I mean, I saw the ties. I don't remember ordering them. I don't know what happened there.
You're going to say I don't remember a lot, aren't you?
Unfortunately, yes, because of the dissociation.
Confronted with a question about plastic ties, Shanda's memory suddenly falters. She attributes these lapses to her mental health, but the pattern of her forgetfulness, conveniently omitting crucial details while remembering minor ones, casts doubt on this explanation.
All right, you may continue, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Ms. Vander Ark, you've told the jury about how busy you were, and you told the jury that you had some physical things going on with you, correct?
Yes, sir.
How did those things impact you in terms of your ability to think clearly, organize, and follow through on information?
Starting right after my husband's stroke, I started experiencing episodes where if you've ever passed out, like the world closes, you get tunnel vision and the world closes in on you until you completely black out. It felt like I was blacking out, but I didn't actually pass out. And the events that happened after that, I have no idea of what happened. I don't remember it. I don't know.
Okay.
And this happened anytime I got even a little stressed.
So you're understanding, you're under oath right now, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're asked to tell the truth right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we're asking you that you not guess at anything?
Correct.
Okay. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
So if you don't understand, we need to say you don't remember, we need to say those things.
Correct.
Okay. And you did testify that these symptoms and this pressure impacted your recollections, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And then there's the final pressure. You're raising children and teenage children, some of them in your home at the same time. So all these things are going on at once. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
While you're at work monitoring, and you've got the ability to monitor the home, would your job permit you? Did you have the ability to sit in front of a monitor and watch the home all the time? Or were there times that you could not do that?
Most of the time I couldn't do it.
And why is that?
Because I had work to do. We were, part of the time I was in court with my judge. And then most of the time I was doing research or doing other tasks that my judge or one of the other judges in the county assigned. So I didn't have time to do that.
When you're watching the videos on the phone, you said you watched them with your telephone screen, correct?
Correct.
And it is a standard screen, nothing special about it?
It was an iPhone, I think it was a 12.
Okay. I've seen those video cameras systems where you can have 4 different cameras going on at one time, all the same screen. Was that your situation, or did you move from camera to camera and only have that camera visible?
No, the cameras were different brands and different cameras, so you could only do one at a time.
Okay. All right. So, and were you wearing an iWatch as well?
An Apple Watch, yeah.
Apple Watch, thank you. Were you able to monitor your children from the Apple Watch?
No.
Okay. So if you were, say, in a courtroom like this and you're doing your job, you got a message on your Apple Watch, what would you get?
You could get messages and pictures. You couldn't see it. I mean, the screen was tiny, but you could get messages, and then there's certain like pat responses, like pre-programmed responses, or you can type with your finger. Okay.
I'm going to ask you about a specific email or text that you received that accompanied a picture. It's the one that the prosecutor's given to the jury that shows Timothy from the chest up and then his legs. You know what I'm talking about?
I have heard about it. I have not actually seen these pictures.
When you respond to it, how's it, how can that be?
I typed we were in court that day. I actually think I responded. I'm in court. I scribbled out a message real quick back to Paul.
Okay. So did you see the photograph afterwards?
No, I had too many messages on my phone. I don't usually scroll back.
Okay. So how did you know to respond to Paul to say, give him some food?
Because of what he said. He had sent a message saying something.
Okay. So you were able to see the message.
Yes, I saw the, and the picture, I mean, it's this big, but there was pictures, I just couldn't see what it was of.
Okay. I deviated again. I tend to do that. Sorry about that. I need to be more organized, and we'll get there. We talked about the leg irons. We talked about the plastic ties. And did you purchase those plastic ties?
I don't remember, honestly.
Okay. What about the hot sauce? Tell this jury about hot sauce and your son Timothy. My understanding. Well, I'm not going to tell you my understanding because you don't need to know that. The question is, whose idea was it to get hot sauce and to administer it to your son?
The idea was originally Paul's.
Okay. And what was the point of the hot sauce?
Because we had tried multiple other discipline methods, and he thought maybe that would get him to stop misbehaving.
Okay.
He suggested it to me, and I was so wrung out, I was willing to try just about anything.
All right.
Insisting she doesn't recall discussions about plastic ties, the defense subtly changes course to the topic of hot sauce. It's alleged Shanda punished Timothy with bread soaked in an extremely hot sauce. She deflects, claiming it was Paul's idea, born from desperation after other disciplinary measures failed.
Were you aware that this hot sauce was purchased online?
Yes.
Do you know why it was purchased online instead of going to Meijer and picking up a bottle of hot sauce?
Well, I didn't have time to go to the store. I mean, I did the grocery delivery through the Walmart app or through the Meijer app. And I didn't see anything. They just had basic stuff. And from our discussion, we had talked about something. And Timothy could handle this child. When I got pregnant.
I know you're going. Well, hold on a second.
Okay.
I
Sorry.
want to make sure we understand this.
As Shanda starts to digress and stray off topic, her lawyer skillfully guides her back, just as she reaches for her water bottle again, hinting at her nervousness.
This hot sauce has a particular label. I've never seen it at Meijer. Did you see the label? Did you see the hot sauce itself? Did you order it?
I believe I ordered at least one of the bottles, yes.
Okay. Why did you order this particular hot sauce or these particular hot sauces? What do they have in common?
Because I think it was the same brand, the same one. Because it was hotter than what you could usually get, and because Timothy he liked spicy food.
Okay.
He loved spicy food.
All right. How do you know you like spicy food?
That actually started before he was ever born. Before I got pregnant with Timothy, I didn't like spicy at all. I mean, nothing, no heat, nothing. And when I got pregnant with him, I started craving, my ex liked spicy foods, but I didn't. And I started craving, I would outspice my ex. It was amazing. I still not to the extent when I was pregnant, but some of that remained. But Timothy, as early as age 2, he could eat a whole bag of the flaming hot Cheetos without a drink. I mean, he could down. He loved spicy food. It was
okay.
It used to scare the heck out of me.
But you were aware that these spices were hotter than what you
yes.
get at Meijer.
Yes.
And that it was for disciplinary issues. Is that
yes.
correct? Did you ever? The testimony was that you did childcare while Paul was at school or at work. Did you ever administer any of the hot sauce yourself?
If I remember, I might have done some on bread a couple of times.
Okay.
But usually by the time I got home, that either we were cooking food, I had to cook, or I had Paul cook something so I could feed everybody. But I don't recall. I think I did it on bread once or twice maybe, but that was it.
There's a text out there that says you suggested putting hot sauce on his peanut. Do you remember hearing that with the jury?
I remember hearing it, yes.
Do you remember saying those things?
I do not, no, sir.
She admits that the hot sauce purchased online was unusually spicier than the average hot sauce. Shanda justifies this by saying that Timothy loved spicy food. It comes off as illogical and raises questions about the truthfulness of her statements when the hot sauce's intended use was for punishment. Shanda goes into a long explanation about how she knows Timothy likes spicy food, and how when she was pregnant with him, she grew to enjoy spicy foods as well. This is an attempt from the defense to humanize Shanda, presenting her as a mother whose actions, however misconstrued, were rooted in an understanding of her son's preferences. While the details of her pregnancy are clearly recounted, details regarding how often she would give Timothy hot sauce as punishment are foggy. The defense lawyer brings up a text message exchanged between Shanda and her son Paul that showed her questioning whether they should drop hot sauce on Timothy's private parts. Shanda claims she doesn't remember sending out the text message, and once again, her gaps in memory conveniently align with moments that would typically require accountability.
We talked about the ice baths. Some talk cold baths, and sometimes they were called ice baths. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The source of the ice, according to the testimony I heard, was your home refrigerator.
No, it was actually a countertop ice maker. The refrigerator did not have an ice maker in it.
Okay. And you didn't go out and buy the 50-pound bags of ice for the home?
No, I did not.
How much ice are we talking about for that tabletop ice maker?
It actually made about a cup and a half of ice. I had to measure it to use it I made some frappes at times.
Okay.
The basket was maybe this wide, and then underneath was the water, where the water was kept, because that's how it made the ice.
Okay.
And then it took about 2 hours to remake more ice.
Okay.
Along with hot sauce, one of the punishments used on Timothy was ice baths. In fact, it would be revealed that hours before Timothy's death, Paul had allegedly put Timothy in an ice bath for nearly 9 hours.
All right. Okay. You admit getting frustrated with your child care efforts with Timothy, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Frustrated, discouraged.
Did you ever intend to hurt him?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You raised other children, correct?
Yes, I did.
And while Timmy was malnourished, to your knowledge, have any of your other children ever been reported as malnourished?
No, not at all.
As I looked at Paul, he seemed like a thin guy to me.
He is. We're all pretty small. Well,
Okay.
my oldest is a little bit thicker.
Okay. My question is this: was Timothy's, when he was healthy, was his build like his brothers, or was he built like his older brother, who's a little heavier?
He went back and forth. There was a situation where he actually got on the bathroom scale it was after Mother's Day of 2022. I can tell you why I know it's after Mother's Day if you want me to.
No, that's not necessary.
Okay. But I was training a new service dog, as has been discussed. It's a Great Dane puppy. He was 7 months old at the time, and he was too big to sit on the bathroom scale to get his weight, and I wanted to see what he weighed. And Timothy, what we would do is somebody would stand on the scale, get your weight, and then you pick up the dog. And Timothy wanted to help out that day. So I thought the dog would be too big for him at that point. He was already really big at 7 months old. But I said, okay, let's try it. And so it was, like I said, sometime after Mother's Day. It wasn't very long after Mother's Day, but at the time he was 104. Timothy was. Okay. He could not pick up the dog because the dog was 102 at the time.
Okay. Part of this process of providing childcare, somebody had to be the eyes in the house when you weren't there. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you selected Paul for that purpose.
I didn't have a choice. That was my only option.
How much did you rely upon what Paul was telling you?
I totally relied on him.
Do you remember the during the reading of the transcripts, the text, that you asked Paul? Matter of fact, let me. Be honest with me. Are you worried about him at all, or is it all a bunch of BS like it has been for days? Do you remember that? Do you remember that text?
Vaguely, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember his response?
I remember he said he wasn't worried about it.
Did you rely on that?
Yes, absolutely. He was the one. I was at home so few hours when the kids were awake, unfortunately.
And then you had to try to sleep yourself.
I tried, yes, sir.
And
they slept better than I did.
Let's face it, your house is a mess. It's a wreck.
Yes, sir.
Why was that?
I'm not a great person at keeping things clean, and having 3 boys, that contributed. I tried to get their help cleaning up as much as I could, but I just didn't have time or the energy. With the lack of sleep and everything else going on, I barely functioned.
Okay. And that message strike that. Use that. Did you depend? I asked you. Did you depend on what Paul was telling you?
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, did Paul ever, for lack of a better term, sound the alarm?
Not that I was aware of, no, sir.
Okay. That one message, was that it?
That was it. That's the only thing I got from Paul that ever had any concern.
With the one little pictures in it? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And let's talk about some other stuff here. Once you discovered that Timothy had passed, and once the police get there, do you tell them the truth?
I was so freaked out. I'm sorry. Honestly, I've got one. I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome. Why didn't you tell them the truth? Why were you so freaked?
I don't remember what my line of thinking was at the time. I was so I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't.
Were you tired at that point?
I was exhausted. The night before he passed, I had less than an hour of sleep.
Were you frightened at that point?
Absolutely. I just lost my son.
You need a moment?
I'm okay.
Okay. Were you expecting? Was this outcome expected by you?
Absolutely not. No.
So would it be safe to say you were surprised?
I was shocked.
Were you in disbelief initially?
Yes, absolutely.
We've got there's an indication that it took you a while to call the police. In fact, you told Paul not to, according to Paul's testimony. Why did it take you so long? He said 18 minutes out loud. Why did it take you so long to call the police?
I have no idea, honestly. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. It was surreal. Like you don't even know what's going on. Time slowed down and I didn't know what was going on.
When was the first time you found out it took 18 minutes to call the police?
Was it yesterday or the day before? Yeah, it was within the last few days.
Okay.
That's the first time.
Do you remember who was testifying when you found out? It doesn't matter.
I think we discussed it at a meeting on Monday. Was it Monday?
Okay.
I think
Doesn't
so.
matter.
And I heard 14 minutes initially, and then the first time I heard 18 minutes was when Paul said it yesterday.
Do you remember? How clear is your memory of your time and from the time you found Timothy and he had passed, and to the time you finished talking to the police that day?
It's spotty.
Okay. The first officer said that you were distraught. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
He said that you were crying. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember telling the police that you pulled Timothy from his bunk bed when you found him in distress?
I remember saying something like that. Yes, sir.
Was that true?
No, sir.
Do you remember providing CPR for Timothy?
Yes, I do.
When did you stop that?
When the ProMed people walked down into the basement, I had asked them to take over, and they didn't take over right away, but they said I had to leave the area.
Okay. Let's do the hard stuff here. Jury's seen pictures of Timothy. We've all seen pictures of Timothy at the time of his death. How could you not know he was that ill? How could you not know?
Honestly, I was barely functioning. I missed a lot. I hate it because, I feel like a complete failure, but there was things that I just didn't see. There was a lot that I didn't see, unfortunately.
In those texts, you instruct Paul to make sure he's getting enough calories, correct?
Yes, sir. I did.
You had a restricted diet, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you instructed Paul to make sure he's getting calories.
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you rely on that?
Absolutely.
Paul says he called the police ultimately. Who called the police?
I called 911. It was on my phone. I'm sure you can pull the call and find out where it's from.
As Shanda is asked about the night of Timothy's death and finding out he had passed away and why she lied to the police, she is overcome with emotion. Given the severe charges and circumstances, it's safe to assume that Shanda might be strategically displaying emotion to evoke empathy or understanding from the jury, especially in moments that are critical to the narrative being constructed by the defense. The goal would be to present oneself as a sympathetic figure or as someone deeply affected by the events in question.
You know, Mr. Johnson makes the same argument today that he made at the trial, that this was just negligence. This was her not understanding what was going on. She was really trying to do the punishment. She was trying to be a good parent, and she just didn't realize that Timothy was in such a horrible condition. And I found myself, especially during closing argument, quite frankly, finding myself almost believing that. And afterwards, after the trial, I sat in my car after leaving that day, trying to understand, why I could feel that way. And what I realized is that I wanted to feel that way because I didn't want to accept the reality of the situation here. And the reality of the situation here is that this person, Ms. Vander Ark, you intentionally engaged in these acts. This wasn't negligence. This is not understanding why, but you intentionally did this with a goal. And I think Mr. Johnson's correct. I don't believe there was an intent to kill here because you would have lost the very thing that you wanted to torture. Without him, you have no one to torture, except maybe the younger children. So I don't believe you intended to kill him. I think you intended to continue on torturing him for as long as you possibly could. The why, I don't know. But all the information that I have in front of me, and I sat down, I really thought about this, and I looked over my notes from the trial, demonstrate that this wasn't negligence. This wasn't you not understanding what was going on. You look through, I read through every single text message of the exhibit, 2,000 plus pages to try to understand what the heck was going through your mind. And what became entirely clear to me is that you knew exactly what you were doing. Immediately afterwards, when police arrive at the home, you immediately concoct this lie about he's been on a hunger strike. He was in the bed and I checked on him and I gave him some food and all this stuff. You got Paul involved in it. At one point in time, put baggy clothes on him. Put clothes on him to make sure, I guess, that he looks like he was actually wearing them, that he was hiding his poor condition, even though you already received text messages, weeks earlier of how bad he looked. You testified yourself how highly intelligent you were. In fact, that's the only thing that you testified to that I think was actually true. You were quite proud of that, boasting how intelligent you were. And not only that, but your actions in hiding this child. You hid him from his grandparents. You made sure that your other son, G, or little man, as you call him, didn't see him. Those text messages talk about not wanting anyone to see him. I want to see him in that condition. You made sure that the garage was closed when you sent him out there with no pants on to clean out the garage. I don't want to believe it because I don't understand. I can't wrap my mind. I've been trying now for this entire case to wrap my mind around about how somebody could do something so horrific, not only to another human being, but to their own child. I'm a father myself. I love my kids. I love them with unconditionally. But quite frankly, there's a mother's love that I've seen that is striking. And anybody who's a parent who's married, most mothers, and not all, but most mothers have such a strong love for their children. And to see what you did to your own child, I don't know if there's a word in the English language to describe how to describe it. I only can come up with just horrific. You intentionally and systematically tortured this child. And let's call it what it is. It's torture. You tortured this child. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't trying to curb his behavior. You tortured him. You monitored him obsessively. You all the things you did. I looked through every one of the messages: bread with hot sauce, wall sits, up and down the stairs, sleep deprivation, ice baths, making him puke up food, monitoring his bathroom time, giving him 60 seconds in the bathroom if he went to urinated, or 5 minutes if he had a bowel movement. You made him sleep in the closet. You threatened us to make him sleep in the garage. You put Tabasco directly in his mouth. You made him put his hands over the head. Made him work in the garage with no pants. And there's two other things that didn't come out in the trial that were in the messages. One, that there was talk of blindfolding him, depriving him of his physical sight as a punishment. And the last thing that struck me is just absolutely horrific in terms of your thinking. There was mentioning of giving him salt water as a punishment. One of the text messages talks about, hey, tell Paul or tell Tim that I'm not going to do the saltwater punishment. And your reasoning for not punishing him was that, oh my God, we can't get him salt water. That could hurt him. That could kill him. But it was because you didn't want to give him another excuse to sit down on the toilet because he'd have diarrhea. He'd have diarrhea. And so he would have an excuse to sit down for a few more minutes while he was diarrhea from salt water. That was your excuse. That was your justification, not that it would hurt him. And you did so for what? Because of some punishment. You wanted to regulate his food, even though you yourself testified that he didn't really gain a lot of weight. Toward the end of these text messages, you and Paul are talking about not wanting him to win. He's not going to win. I didn't allow pictures to be shown in open court of Timothy as he was when he died, because I didn't want people to remember him like that. But of all the things you took away from him, one thing I didn't want you to take away from him was at least some shred of dignity. And then I also thought, well, I'm a judge. I'm a human being. I don't know how to right this wrong. We try to do that. I try to do that from the bench every day. There's no way to right this wrong except impose a sentence that essentially takes away your freedom. And I thought to myself, what do I do? And I will tell you this. I'm choosing not to remember your son dead, looking like a Holocaust victim, but I'm choosing to remember like that. And you can't even look at him. That's how he was. A beautiful child with a lot of life in his eyes. That's who your son was. And you took that from him. I'm choosing to remember him as a happy individual with life, not as an individual. And that's the picture I want people to remember of your son. You took that from him. You took it from him. For what reason, I don't know. Mr. Johnson's right. There is something broken in you. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't negate what you did here. So besides remembering him like that, I'm not going to let you hide in the darkness anymore. People know what you are now. They know what you did. You're not able to hide in the darkness anymore. Timothy won. And he won because we know what you did to him now. It's not hidden anymore. we know who you are. That's the way that I'm going to honor him. You don't win.
In the trial of Shanda, the contrasting approach of the prosecution and defense in their lines of questioning were stark, each aiming to paint a different picture of Shanda's character and her treatment of Timothy. While the prosecution sought to underline the severe and systematic abuse Timothy suffered, the defense attempted to frame Shanda's actions within a context that might elicit understanding or even sympathy from the jury. Ultimately, the court's sentencing reflected a deep consideration of the nature and gravity of Shanda's crimes against Timothy. She received a sentence of 50 to 100 years in prison for first-degree child abuse, acknowledging the systematic and consistent torture Timothy endured, with 575 days credited for time already served. Further emphasizing the severity of her actions, for the charge of felony murder, Shanda was handed a life sentence without the possibility of parole, again with 575 days served. This is the most severe penalty available and reflects the ultimate responsibility Shanda holds for the death of Timothy as a direct result of her actions. Paul Ferguson's guilty plea to first-degree child abuse and the death of his brother, 15-year-old Timothy Ferguson, marks a significant moment in this heart-wrenching case. His plea came a week after their mother, Shanda Vander Ark, was found guilty of Timothy's death, highlighting the complicity within the family in the abuse that led to Timothy's tragic demise. The details surrounding Timothy's treatment are harrowing. According to Paul, Timothy was subjected to living in a tiny makeshift cell in their basement, an environment so deplorable that it bore the overwhelming stench of urine and feces. The use of handcuffs, zip ties, surveillance cameras, and motion sensors to monitor and restrict Timothy's movement paints a picture of a young life lived in constant surveillance and control. The abuse extended to forced consumption of Carolina Reaper hot sauce, exposure to cold water baths lasting over 9 hours, and physically exhausting exercises, all under the guise of punishment. Paul's testimony reveals a deeply disturbing dynamic within the family, driven by Shanda's directives. His claim of low self-esteem and a desire to please his mother suggests a manipulation that extended beyond Timothy to other family members. Despite the gruesome nature of his actions, Paul's acknowledgement of his role in his brother's death and his eventual confession to the authorities offer a glimpse into the complex interplay of control, fear, and familial loyalty that characterized their household. The sentencing of Paul Ferguson addresses his participation in the systemic abuse that led to his brother's untimely death. Yet, it also throws into sharp relief the role of Shanda Vander Ark as the orchestrator of this abuse. Shanda's actions, as described throughout the trial and sentencing, epitomize the characteristics of a sadistic mother. Her manipulation of her children to inflict pain and suffering on Timothy, her lack of remorse, and the calculated methods of torture she devised reflect a profound departure from the maternal instinct to protect and nurture.